She thrives. May speaker, when life feels heavy, finding strength in the middle of your struggle. The last time I actually saw you was at your mom homegoing service. It has been some years.
Yeah, that was in 2009, actually.
Wow, wow.
July, coming up on the anniversary pretty soon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was actually during the summer. Well, if you
Mhm.
don't mind, can you share a little bit about yourself for the ladies that will be attending your session? And before you do that, let me say this. When I post your flyer, they start RSVPing that
Oh,
same day. So you are already encouraging people to attend this session. But yes, if you don't mind, can you share a little bit about yourself?
yeah. Well, thank you for that. And absolutely. Well, my name is Felecia Bellamy. I'm originally from Walterboro, South Carolina. I've lived in Longs now for about 28, 29 years. I am a licensed professional counselor, a school administrator. This is my second year as a assistant principal at Waterway Elementary. Before I became an assistant principal, I was a school counselor at Riverside Elementary. And I was there for about 13 years. I am also the owner of Inspire Counseling Services, LLC. And I also own a travel agency business that is called Felicia Destinations Unlimited. Um, a lot of my work centers around helping people heal emotionally,
Mhm.
recognizing their worth and navigating through difficult situations in healthy ways. I think I knew from a child, maybe a teenager, that I was going to do something that would be helping people or that would involve helping people. Um, and what inspired this passion honestly comes from both my professional experience, my personal life experiences. Um, I've seen how many women carry silent burdens while still showing up for everybody else. Um,
Yes.
Many women, they're leading, they're parenting, caregiving, working, serving, you name it, and they're doing that while they're encouraging others and quietly struggling
Yes.
themselves. And so um, I understand grief. I understand emotional heaviness and what it feels like to keep functioning while hurting internally.
Hmm.
And because of that, I'm passionate about creating spaces where women feel seen, safe, encouraged, and where they're reminded that they do not have to carry everything alone.
Yeah. And you kind of like went into my next question for to you, and maybe you can, if you don't mind, elaborate a little bit more. Why do you feel that women struggle silently while trying to take care of everyone else?
They're used to being the helper, the nurturer, the strong one, the problem solver. And over time, they begin to feel guilty for resting or asking for help or admitting that they're overwhelmed. And unfortunately, because of that, many women suffer silently because they don't want to appear weak. They don't
Yeah.
want to burden others, or they feel like nobody would truly understand what they're carrying emotionally. But I try to constantly remind women in the setting that I get to use that the truth is constantly surviving without support eventually becomes even more emotionally heavy.
Yes, yes, yes. I completely agree. A little self-disclosure. My mom transitioned day after Christmas, the day before my twin son's first birthday. My dad 2 days before their 18th birthday. But I'm gonna go back to my mom.
Um,
And therapy for me was in the shower. And I didn't realize, I thought I was doing the best. Like, okay, you know what? We celebrate Christmas the day after Christmas. That's my day to reflect on the time she transitioned. We celebrate your birthday on the 27th, and she was buried on January the 2nd, her birthday. However, when they became teenagers, I didn't know they was affected. And here I assumed I was doing the best by going into the shower, making sure I, share with tears, reflect, or going in my closet to pray. But I didn't know they was affected throughout the years. So you absolutely, and this is why even in this profession now, I share with, even with patients, parenting while grieving is not good because the kids can pick it up.
they do.
Yes.
And, we as parents are just, as women, but definitely as parents, we try to shield our children from all of that.
Mhm.
And we try to be strong. I played that role when my mom passed away, when my dad passed away. I was in charge of taking care of all of those things. And so I had to be strong for my brothers, other family members. Um, and so it's tough. And you think you are hiding it from them, and they see it. They
Mhm.
see it, and then they internalize it, and then they act out in their own ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And you speaking of, like I said, I do remember your mom homegoing service, and what I saw was a woman of strength that day with you. Like he was making sure everything went right as a celebration in honor of your mom. Yeah.
Mhm.
But you mentioned something in your other question as you were talking about, and I want to ask you this question. How can women acknowledge their struggles without feeling guilty or weak?
I think they have to it's accept what is happening, and understand that there is no weakness in struggling. There's no weakness in grieving. Um, you know, we learn, I believe, probably as a little girl, our little women, little girls, especially for me, I'm the oldest. And so I kind of like was the caretaker of my brothers. My mom struggled with a mental illness. And so a lot of responsibility kind of fell on me. And so I was strong as a child. And I felt like that's what I had to be like. But I think you learn that it is okay to be weak in those moments. Because when you're not, you're holding all of that in, and it comes out one way or the other. Um,
Mhm.
Sometimes it comes out in how you interact with your children. Sometimes it comes out in depression. Sometimes
Mhm.
it comes out in anxiety. And so, just accepting that things are going to happen, and it's okay to be strong in that, but also acknowledging it's also okay to be weak.
Yes, yes. And also too, as you mentioned the word grief, so for some who may not experience like you and I have experienced with the loss of parents, but grief is the loss is something that you expected your life could have been, the loss of your home, the loss of relationship. I know a lot of adult parents are dealing with their adult children going
Yeah.
silent. So grief is just not where someone has transitioned, but whatever that loss that they're experiencing.
You're absolutely right. I've done, you know, I I've done a grief series. God kind of dealt with me back in November or October, as we were going into Thanksgiving. You know, one of the things that I've been able to do through dealing with my own grief is, you know, encourage others. And I came up with a grief series where I talk about that exactly, that grief is just not death. Because for a long time, people felt like, okay, death, that's grief, but it's also losing a job, losing a relationship. Um, my youngest left to go to college. She was the baby, empty nesting. Um, those things are grief. And so we have to call them by name. And one of the things that I was able to do is do that through the grief series. I think it ended up being like 8 to 12 weeks, but it was really good, and it carried on into Christmas. Um, but just kind of naming that and letting people know that even retirement, um, all of those things kind of end up being grief in some shape, way, or form, because, when you have done something for so long, that becomes a part of who you are. And when you're no longer doing it, you're trying to adjust to the difference. And sometimes that's hard. It's not as easy as what people think it is.
Yes, yes, especially as you say, becoming an empty nester. I
Mhm.
share with people, I lost my identity in raising my children. And so I had to regain my identity because it was always that thing, being a mother come first. But now
Yeah.
I try to encourage people, you could be a mother, but also taking care of yourself. And for some who are, you're married, but making sure you're not pouring from an empty cup. But that's definitely grief. I really did. I lost myself when my children went off to college. It was just like, oh my gosh, what to do now? Because I just made life about them. Yes,
Yeah.
that's a
And
great.
that happens
Yeah.
more than you know. And relationships, um, that. I could do a whole nother talk on that, whether it's a marriage that has ended or a relationship that you've been in for a long time and has ended. Those things cause grief because, there's something like a broken heart and,
Mhm.
people having to come back from that. And, um, you know, for some people, they find out who they are in those moments and they deal with the here and now, then, um, but not understanding what they were dealing with was actually grief makes it a little bit harder because you didn't have a name to call it.
Mhm.
You call it heartbreak or, suffering from a heart problem
Mhm.
when it's actually grief.
Yes, yes, exactly. And even as you were mentioning about in regards to relationship, I think not just in romantic relationship, what do you feel in regards to interpersonal or family relationship? Because some people have had to accept that maybe that relationship with their sibling or maybe with their parent or maybe with that family member would never be what they expected. So they have to now reposition that
Yes,
sibling or reposition whoever that loved one they love unconditionally, but knowing it's a toxic relationship. What do you feel about that? Do you feel that's grief as well?
absolutely. Absolutely. And, for some people, they've been doing that for so long that, we've learned or we were taught early on in our years that blood is thicker than water.
Mm.
And so what I've learned is that, sometimes it's the family that kind of take you through there as those young people.
Take you through that. I love it.
Yeah, and you have to learn to put yourself first because as we've already discussed as women, we are automatically the nurturers. We are automatically the caregivers. We're the problem solver, and sometimes we overdo that. And family take advantage of you,
Hmm.
especially, when you have poured out and poured out and poured out. So yes, absolutely. And, being able to recognize that comes with grief when you
Yeah.
have to pull back from the people who you have loved unconditionally, because you've now realizing, okay, wait a minute, this is not healthy. Um, or wait a minute,
Hmm.
this person is taking advantage. And yes, it is family, but in caring for yourself, you can't pour out of an empty cup, and
Yes.
you have to come first.
Yes. 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 When you say that, yeah, absolutely. Because, we both from the South, and I'm quite sure it's just not a Southern thing, but being
Mm.
raised that blood is thicker than water. But I share with people, depending on the blood and depending on the water, because sometimes blood could be contaminated. Sometimes you can want to go try to donate your blood, and they say, nope, we can't accept it. So it's
Mm.
it's depending
That
on the
that's
blood,
good right there.
and depending
Yeah.
on the water,
Yes, ma'am.
depending on the water, as well as what about in your line where have you experienced where some people are feeling the grief because they feel within the relationships it's not being reciprocated, that they're giving more into friendships, giving and it's not being reciprocated, and now there's seem like okay, it's a one-sided relationship.
Yeah, and those are the worst.
Yeah.
Um, they take so much out of you. I feel like for some people, especially for those people who love hard, um, you give chance after chance after chance, hoping, that the person changes, um, wishing that that person changes. And because you are given chance after chance after chance, it ends up, sometimes coming back to slap you in your face.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I feel like those one-sided relationships, you have to recognize them for what they are.
Hmm.
And, I believe in grace, because I have learned through my field of work that, people didn't just become the way they are just because. Um, some of them are dealing with their own trauma and they're only doing what it is that they have learned to do. When you're in an environment, you figure out really quick how to adapt in that environment. Um, and until you learn better, you can't do better.
Hmm.
And so that goes for the people who are on the other end as well, who are sitting back and allowing, those one-sided relationships are um, different one-sided personalities to take effect. You have to, even in that, put yourself first. You have to recognize it for what it is, acknowledge what it is, and begin to work on your heart. So because it's hard,
Yes, it is.
it's hard when you are um, a person who cares so deeply for other people. Um, Sometimes we get overwhelmed with just making sure that you're being supportive, that we lose ourselves, and that's not what God has intended for us to do.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said it because you mentioned a word earlier when we were saying about sometimes feeling guilty. And one of the things for me that I share with people, especially when they get to a mid-age, where a person, even if maybe a romantic relationship, maybe family members, where they have been accustomed to you allowing this behavior. And so, yes, adults can have a little tantrum because now you're putting those boundaries in place to say, no, I can't no longer X, whatever that case may be. Yeah. So, what do you feel for the women who will attend having challenges setting those boundaries? Because now they decide
Well,
to put yourself first. Excuse me. Yes.
yeah, well, I feel like, boundaries are so important. Um, Actually, it's at the heart of a lot of this, what we do,
Mhm.
when we're trying to repair and break these cycles that we've learned. Because when you get right down to it, it's about the boundaries that we've never had, where we've allowed people to um, come and go, um, do as they please, be disrespectful. And the truth is we treat people, or we teach people how to treat us. They learn
Yes.
really quickly
Yes.
what they can do and what they can get away with. And sometimes without having those boundaries, it gets out of hand.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think making sure that you have that, and it's hard because we do a lot of things in the name of love, whether
Mhm.
it's for our children, whether it's for our significant others, whether it's for a family. At the heart of it all is love. And sometimes when you're a person who love hard, you kind of set those boundaries to the side, as I said earlier, hoping for change. But at the heart of all of this is you definitely have to have boundaries. Um, that is how you begin to break the cycle, by
Mhm.
teaching people how to treat you, saying no when your no means to be no. Um,
Exactly.
you know, not giving in to things that we know that's not good for us.
Mhm. Mhm.
Not dealing with toxic behavior because we're hoping that the person change, or being disrespected because we're hoping that the person change. And so, yes, boundaries are important, and it's one of the hardest things to learn. But once you get that going and you are practicing it, it becomes second nature.
Yes, yes, I agree. One of my favorite quotes, it's not by me, but it says, anything that costs you your peace is too expensive. And
Yes.
that's the core of it, and one of
Mhm.
the things also that I share with people when it comes to boundaries, if I love you, and I know usually if I say, hey, I need you to take me to the store, and usually you don't mind if you're not busy, and you say no, I should know something is going wrong and you just don't feel like it. So I'm going to
Mhm.
respect that decision. But if someone is trying to push past that boundary, make you feel guilty, then you might just need to continue to say no. But that person who loves you and love you unconditionally, they gonna understand without even you explaining your reasons why you saying no.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, for some people, that's where the entitlement piece come in, because some
Mm-mm.
people think they are entitled
Yes, yes.
to your time, to your yes. They think they are entitled, and you get to see who people really are when you tell them no, or
Mhm.
when you begin to have more respect for yourself, or begin to put those boundaries in place. Because with boundaries come change, um,
Yes.
and freedom.
Yeah. And, do you agree in regards, and the reason I was mentioning about for some people who have allowed behavior so long, one of the things I like to share with people, maybe a little disclaimer. I know you've been accustomed to me doing this for so long, but going forth, I'm not going to be able to do X, Y,
Yeah.
Z. Because
Mhm.
sometimes we can spoil people. We can, spoil people, make them feel like we're superwoman or,
Yes.
maybe we're that one that they can come and emotionally dump outside of our occupation. So,
Yeah.
again, what about to that woman who had maybe this, whether it's a significant other, whether it's a family member that they have allowed this behavior 20 plus years? What do you feel, what would be the suggestion you would give to that person, setting that boundary?
I would say to that person that you're not superwoman,
Yes.
that you are not superwoman and you can say no. That is so true. Sometimes because of our own trauma that we haven't addressed, we feel like we have to be busy. We
Mhm.
have to be helping. We have to be doing something to help somebody else. Sometimes it's because we didn't get the help that we needed, whether it was as a child, whether it was as a teenager, whether it was as a young adult. Sometimes that comes out in overdoing,
Mhm.
not being able to say no, and feeling guilty when you want to say no. I would say to that woman, you're not superwoman, and you don't have to be. Um, find your balance.
Yes, 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 yes.
Find your balance.
Now, what are some of the things you're hoping for the women that who will be attending the session to walk away with?
Well, my hope is that every woman leaves feeling seen.
Mhm.
They leave feeling encouraged and reminded that, she's not alone. I want women to walk away understanding that struggling does not make them less valuable and that they deserve the same care, same grace, and compassion that they so freely give. That is a must for me. I also hope that they leave with practical encouragement, to rest when needed. That's hard for a lot of us. Acknowledge what they're feeling and do so in an honest way. Lean into healthy support and stop carrying silent emotional weight alone because they
Mhm.
don't have to do it alone. More than anything, I want women to leave feeling hopeful,
Yes.
hopeful that healing is possible, hopeful that they can get through difficult seasons because there will be difficult seasons,
Yeah.
just like, I mean, seasons come and go. And
Mhm.
those seasons, there will be some difficult ones. And so I want them to be hopeful and know that they can get through those difficult seasons and hopeful that even in the middle of the struggle, there's still purpose attached to their lives. I think
Mhm.
that is important too.
Good. Good. That's really great. Yeah, 'cause especially when you're saying about what the struggle, one of the things I've heard this before, so these are not my words, but I've
Mhm.
found this in my life to be true. Either you're entering a storm, in a storm, or coming out of a storm. And sometimes with social media, it can make people feel when they're going through their own challenges that they're the only one going through something. But someone is going through something in their life. Might not be at the same time, but it's something is happening in someone's life. Yes. Yeah, and
Right.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Uh-huh.
No, and I wanted to go back to the question that you asked about, what I say, definitely, that you're not superwoman, but I would also tell her that you're not failing because you feel tired emotionally.
Hmm.
There's some women who can't get out of the bed daily because they're depressed. I would say life becomes heavy, especially when you're carrying responsibilities, disappointments, grief. That's a whole thing by itself, our emotional pain for a long time, and I would mostly want to encourage her to stop being so hard on herself. We
Yes.
are our hardest critics. We critique ourselves 10 times 10 times 10. And so I would encourage her to stop being so hard on herself and to give herself grace.
Yes.
The
Yes.
same grace that we so freely give to others,
Mhm.
And I would also remind her that she does not have to carry everything alone. That goes back to being strong and feeling like because you're so strong, you can't be weak.
Hmm.
there's support out here. Um, and, you know, boundaries matters, counseling
Yes.
matters.
Mhm.
It's important. And I know there's, a stigma for some people. I see more and more people now these days that are taking advantage of counseling, but prayer matters the most.
Yes, yes, yes. And I guess it leads to why the birthing of your journal book, You Are Enough, guarding your heart while healing, growing, and becoming. Can you share a little bit about your journal, your journal book?
Well, this is a new
Okay.
baby that is coming out. I'm working on it. Is in the works now. I'm excited about it. One of the things that I've been doing for as long as I can remember, you know, and encouraging myself, just encouraging others, and so I have all of this daily encouragement um, that has really gotten me through some tough times. And every time I feel like I'm going to stop making those posts, I get a message from somebody who just says, you know what, thank you for encouraging me. And so um, I said, what better way to keep this going than to put my thoughts in a book?
Hmm.
Um, and so that's where that is coming from. It's going to be a book of encouragement, but I love journaling questions, and um, I feel like journaling is an important piece of healing because you get to self reflect. They're your answers, and you get to look at yourself and put that down on paper. Um, and so I decided to come up with a book
Hmm.
that's going
Yeah.
to have all of that in there.
Yeah, I love the title. Now they can find when you launch the book, they can find it on the Inspire Me, your counseling page for your practice.
Yes, I have on Facebook, I have an Inspire Counseling
Hmm.
services page. That is where I do my series. That is where I post the encouragements. And
And
so, um, you know, Proverbs, um, I spent some time in there, and that verse spoke to me. Um, Guard your heart because everything that you do flows from it. And I
yes.
do mean everything that you do flows from it. And so um, I was able to do my first women's conference in March this year, and we've decided that is going to be an annual event. We um, it was life changing,
Yes.
and so that is something that I've adopted from here on out. Guard your heart, and each series has a different title to it. I'm currently doing um, Guard Your Heart and talking about physical abuse, um, all of the abuses, that has taken place. And so that's all of that has gone together.
Hmm. I love that title, and because it goes back to something you said earlier in regards to about, and I'm paraphrasing, that sometimes a person is giving out so much love, and and for many of us, and I'm saying I'm guilty of it as well. Sometimes you have to shift your expectation that someone is going to be what you're trying to give, and so that's where it comes in, and really asking God, sharpen my spirit of discernment, because I'm
Yes.
a natural giver. I am such a natural giver, but I had to learn over the years. There are some people will continue to take, to take, to take, to take, 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 take. So
Yeah.
that's where we have to lean not to our own understanding and say, okay, God,
Absolutely.
who are we supposed to be a blessing to? Who are we even supposed to give our time to? Because the enemy could use people to come and take up so much of our time saying they're going through, and before you know it, time has slipped by, and then you have no time for self-care. But I absolutely love that title. Now, also, too, you have your grief conference coming up in November, correct?
Yes. There will be and this will be the first time that I will be doing a grief conference. I have spoken at a couple of churches on grief. I've done the grief series, but I am going to do a conference, much like what I did for Guard Your Heart. There's such a need. People are losing people every day, every second, and I just kind of feel compelled to put together a conference where we can sit in a room and connect on an emotional level and talk about what grief really is and how we cope with that and how we get through that, and not just for women but for anyone, for men and women, because we know grief doesn't discriminate.
Yes, yes, very much needed. During my clinical, I did a whole year of bereavement counseling, and it was so
Mhm.
tough because it was with a hospice facility, and so even with grief, you deal with some people not being able to express how they
Yeah.
felt towards the person before they leave. You just so much can come with it, and it's still living in a present moment. There are certain things that's happened in the past. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And those things really take a lot out of you. Um, they take a lot out of you as a counselor. I can't tell you how many people have sat across from me that came in broken because they never dealt with grief,
Yeah.
whether it was, a mother who abandoned them, or a father who um, passed away, or a sibling who left and got married, and they kind of felt like they left them at home to deal with everything else. And so grief shows up in so many different ways, and it will get the best out of you if you don't deal with it.
Yes, yes, I agree. And sometimes showing up, I don't know if other you probably more likely in your experience as a clinician, sometimes that can be projected into maybe that person relationship with a significant other, or even as a parent, because they have not processed that grief. One of the techniques that I've used with people who have that unresolved grief is the empty chair technique. Act
Mhm.
like that
That's a good
person
one.
is there. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. That can show up in different areas. So,
Yeah.
are you accepting new clients? I know you're multitasking, like you say, you're assistant principal. You did share with me you're getting close to possibly retiring, probably a couple of years from now. But are you
Yeah.
accepting new clients?
I am.
Yeah.
I feel like every client that comes across um, my space, they're God sent.
Mhm.
Um, and so I make room. Um, I work Monday through Friday as an assistant principal. And so I don't see clients until the evening. I start about 4 o'clock, 4:15. And sometimes, you know, I might not see my last client until 8 p.m.,
Mhm.
which means that it's ending at 9.
Mhm.
Um, so I do what I need to do to meet the needs, not because I can't say no, but because I feel like God has called me to do this. And so when I get a call from the ladies at the office about a new client or a new client pop up on I feel like they're there because God has led them there.
Yeah. Purpose. And it's something about when you walk
Purpose.
into your purpose. Yes. It's a different type of feeling. Yes. A different type.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
Well, anything else you would like to say as we wrap it up?
I thank you for the opportunity to be able to pour into these women. As I said earlier, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm encouraging myself. And me encouraging myself, I get to encourage all these other women who probably at one point didn't even know that they needed it. Um, and so I'm thankful. I don't take it lightly that God has given me the opportunity. I don't take it lightly um, that He's given me the strength to be able to do this because it is not easy. And having to do it in the middle of your own struggles, in the middle of your own storms, um, builds character
Mhm.
that was already there, but also helps you. God gonna get you where it is that He needs you to be. And we all know He has a sense of humor and how He does that sometimes.
Yes.
Um, so I'm thankful.
Yeah, yeah. And it's amazing. The speaker I had for the month of April, and she was like why, as far as how I thought about her in the title, it's not but God. He gave me the title, and you're the one for this month. I got someone coming from June. She went to school with you as well, but she lives in South Africa now. So I'm just been obedient. I'm glad the ones he been allowing me to reach out, giving me the titles for whatever in that season. So I know I really do believe you have a word. He gave me that title, and just hearing you talking and the endeavors you have going forth. So I know that's going to be a great empowerment session to encourage women. Yeah.
Yeah. When you sent me the invite and I saw the title, I was like, really, God? This is what we're doing, and I call my best friend Carmina. She and I have been, Carmina, we've been,
Okay.
Carmina Strong. We've been friends since elementary. I called her and I said, can you believe this? But it's the perfect title. And I know that God is in it because of the title.
Yes, yes. And I mean, I'm not just saying this to say, and you're going to see when I send you the ones who have RSVP, within a matter of time, I posted your flyer. They started RSVP. South Carolina has begun to represent, and a few here in my area as well. But yes, so that just lets you know that you are doing a great work there in South Carolina. Yeah.
Well, to God be the glory.
Not just South Carolina. I can assume they just South Carolina. It could just be your connections as well in other states. Yeah, I didn't look at where they're corrected on that. Yeah, because you do have your social, and I'll put this at the end of this interview, all your links to your social media so people can follow you as well.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. Hold just a moment. Stop the recording.
You've been putting in work when nobody sees, planting seeds in silence, watering dreams, smiling through pain, still showing up. Even when life keep calling your bluff, they don't know what it costs you to stay in the race. The prayers you whispered with tears on your face, but you never folded, never sat still. That kind of faith gon' break through for real. Your time coming, I feel it in the wind. All that grind, all that pain, about to turn to winds. Every no you heard, God gon' flip to yes. Every closed door was just a divine test. So keep going hard, don't slow down.